If your business runs on 5 different apps, 12 browser tabs, and one spreadsheet that everyone's afraid to touch, it's probably time for Odoo. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that connects every part of your business into one powerful, easy-to-use platform. So instead of wasting time switching between disconnected systems, your entire business works together in real time. Your team moves faster, your data stays accurate, and you can actually focus on growing your business. Let one unified system run your entire business. From the first opportunity to the final payment, everything works together in one place. Whether you're a small business or managing a large operation, Odoo gives you the flexible platform built to grow with you. Try it today for free at odoo.com. That's ODOO.com.
Hello and welcome to episode 323 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, it's August and all is not well in the world, especially if you're a nuclear power plant in southern Europe. Plants are getting shut down and curtailed due to climate change. It's like me trying to run a marathon in a heat wave, wearing a fur coat, or just running a marathon in any weather.
The recent heat waves have affected air travel. Hot air is thinner air, and many flights have been delayed while they take passengers off the plane to make sure it's light enough to take off. The pilots offered to be the first to go, saying, let's be honest, these planes fly themselves anyway.
They do. The IEA, the International Energy Agency, underestimated EV adoption in our current year and has updated its forecast. And all this because the United States underestimated Iran.
The country of Laos has banned the import of new fossil-fueled cars effective immediately. So, you know how Cuba has all those American cars from the 1950s? Will people in Laos be driving their 2025 Toyota Corollas forever? Well, since they share a border with China, my guess is probably not.
Oh, that and more in this summer edition of the Clean Energy Show.
Yeah, so speaking of summer, I want to take us back to the year 2009. And I was making a documentary called My Dinner with Generation X, and we went around interviewing lots of people who were born in the early 1960s. This is the David Foote definition of Generation X. And I did an interview with you back in 2009 in your backyard.
Born in 1966. Don't put me in early 60s. Don't make me even older than I am.
Yes.
But what was his definition of Generation X, by the way? I think because people are confused by that.
Yeah, David Foote says 1961 to 66, which is the baby boom in Canada went to 1966. So the idea of Generation X is we're the back quarter of the baby boom. We're technically baby boomers, but because there were so many other baby boomers born before us, they took all the jobs. And when we got out of school and looked to the workforce, it was all filled up with people who were 10 years older than us. And that's really, true. To me, what the Generation X phenomena was and means. And, you know, I made a whole documentary about it, and it's all pointless because nobody cares and nobody really wants to understand.
Well, it feels like when I came into the workforce, people 10 years ahead of me, had an English degree and they were running NASA, It's you had any sort of education, you had it made in the world.
Yeah.
Whereas me, not so much. I'm still begging for money on Patreon, for God's sake.
And pretty much all of the authority figures in my life, they were all about 10 years older than me. And yeah, like you say, they were not really qualified at all. And yet they had jobs that I could, never in a million years dream of getting. That was our experience when we got out of university in the 1980s. And
okay, so you made a documentary that you traveled all over North America. You went to Washington, D.C., you went to Vancouver, British Columbia. Mm-hmm. You came to my house, which I had just moved into, this passive solar house in Regina. So you did a lot of traveling for it, and it was nationally televised, am I correct?
Yeah, it aired on CBC nationally, which was real fun for me.
And I watched it.
Yeah.
And one of those things that no one ever came up to me, and I was worried people would say, hey, I saw you, you slacker. I saw you in this documentary.
Yes.
But that never happened.
Yeah.
There's still Chime. You can watch it on YouTube, I believe, right?
It's on YouTube.
Available on YouTube.
I'm really proud of that documentary. Neil Howe is in it as well. He's the American demographics expert, and he's been in the news a lot in the last few years because he has a book called The Fourth Turning, and he essentially predicted the current political turmoil that we're in America. Because all of this, according to him, is cyclical. Every few generations, there's always these big upheavals.
A reset.
A reset. And so Neil Howe's in that documentary. He's amazing. James is in it. David Foote, the Canadian demographics guy.
Let's just clarify why I'm in it, because you're talking about some very prestigious people.
Yeah.
And then there's James. Why am I in it? That's a question I asked at the time. It's a question I ask now.
Well, it was my film, so I could do whatever the hell I wanted. And
that's true.
Part of what I wanted was to just interview people I thought would be fun to interview. And, people in the Generation X bracket. I figured you would have some stories to tell about, those job experiences that we were just talking about. How it was difficult in that sense. And I wanted to make it fun and entertaining. And I knew you would be up for that. And and a lot of the interviews are just like friends of mine and people who are fun to talk to.
So how is it that some Generation X demographics are pegged to go into the 80s? Like, how come they have such a wide definition of different people, assessing that? I would say the things that you're interested in is the job part was very specific to that period of time in the 60s.
Well, Neil Howe in America, he wouldn't say 61 to 66. He would say 1961 to approximately 81, because to him, a generation is 20 years. Like, that's what we tend to think of as a generation. Right. So he wasn't that interested in breaking it down into a smaller group. But really, the first definition of it came from David Foote, the Canadian demographics guy. And it's a very specific phenomenon, like I said, the back quarter of the baby boom, who just had a massively different experience, from the people born 10 years before.
And all this started with Douglas Copeland's book.
Yeah. It was called Generation X, Tales for an Accelerated Culture, and it came out in 90.
Did you interview him? I can't remember.
No, we asked him. He said no.
Oh, come on, Douglas. You want to sell books? Get on national television. Come on.
No, I don't think he was interested in being known as the Generation X guy. But David Foote said yes, and he was a very successful author at the time who wrote a book called Boom, Bust, and Echo. And it took Douglas Copeland's novel as a starting point and the what was described in Douglas Copeland's book, and he put numbers to it. He said, well, what's going on is really that 1961 to 66, the back quarter of the baby boom, specifically in Canada, because we had the biggest baby boom of the developed world. So we were the ones that had the biggest kind of issue with it.
So he talked in that book, Copeland's book, about McJobs, like educated people working at McDonald's, for example, or, jobs that don't require an education and being overqualified, as I recall, for the work.
Overqualified and underemployed. That was really the main kind of Gen X trait. So to set the scene, so I'm going to play a clip. So we interviewed James for about 90 minutes in his backyard, and, then only 3 or 4 minutes made it into the film. So there's 90 minutes of outtakes, basically. And we were sitting in your backyard, and it was a wonderful summer evening, I believe in August. I don't know the exact date. It was just and we started talking about things like clean energy. In a way, it was kind of like the first episode of the podcast, really, because you had that weather station up in your backyard.
Yes.
And so that's the setup for this clip. We'd been talking about you monitoring the weather with your weather station there in the backyard, and you can play the clip.
I have no idea what this is going to be, so it'll be fun.
It's not good to have to look for the used. Stupid refinery. Why can't they invent an electric car? Huh? We grew up in the 70s when cancer can be beaten. Those were the courses. We all thought it was going to happen. We all thought we'd be, driving rocket ships and cancer would be beaten. Here we are. There's no electric car and there's still cancer, damn it.
All right, the man makes a good point, Brian.
Yeah, it is fun to listen to these because I listen to myself in the interviews as well, and it's sometimes surprising what I say. Sometimes I kind of guess what I'm going to say, and sometimes I can't. But the thing you said at the very beginning there, you said it's no good when the wind is from the east because of the refinery. That's what you said at the beginning there. It's a bit garbled.
I had just moved into this house and was starting to learn that. That is a bit surprising to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
okay.
You were already worried about the wind. And then, why didn't someone invent an electric car? Well, I looked it up. The Nissan Leaf was the first widely available commercial electric car. And it was
talked about in the news. We were following that stuff religiously, like that and the Chevy Volt with the V, which was a plug-in.
Yeah.
Basically a plug-in electric car. But, like a hybrid with a hybrid motor.
And I'm not sure when the Volt was announced or released, but The Nissan Leaf was officially announced on August 1st, 2009, like right in that summer when we did that interview.
Okay.
And it didn't come out until like later in 2010. The first model year was 2010.
End of 2010, very end.
And it wasn't until late in the year. But August 1st, 2009, they announced the Nissan Leaf. And you and I were sitting in your backyard wondering why no one has invented an electric car.
Well, maybe that's why I was on my mind, is because I had been reading about it. That's a possibility.
Yeah.
But from the get-go, I was counting the days until I could afford a used one.
Yeah.
And that's eventually what happened.
Yeah.
They went down in price pretty quick because the batteries had a bad reputation and people were scared to buy something with that low of a range. And I imported one from across the country in Quebec to here.
Yeah.
And it's still running.
Yeah.
You know, I've had the high school shop do some suspension work and brake work on it. After, what is it? It's a 2013, so it was made at the very beginning of 2013, so 13 years old, at 13 and a half years old now. And I want that car to run forever.
Yeah.
I'm taking it in for a hail claim, and they might write it off or prevent me from driving it or something. I don't know, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and it's just kind of your little runaround city car, so you don't need massive range or, anything special.
Yeah, even here, when you use the heater, I'd wish I was telling my wife this yesterday, I wish I got the model, the trim model that was a one trim higher because it had heat pump on it in that year. So I would have had a backup heater for my car because the resistive heater, the main heater, broke.
Right.
And it's $4,000 to fix.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not going to be fixed. But anyway, if I had that, that would be great because we were looking at a video on the new Bolt and it has a heat pump. But I always argue that where we live in our weather, the range for a heat pump is not visited very often by our weather.
Right.
It's usually goes from like plus 15 to minus 15, and that's kind of the cutoff. It's just sort of oscillates back and forth. And it did this week. I mean, this morning, it was 3.6 degrees this morning.
I noticed that when I woke up. It was unbelievable.
That's Celsius, a little bit above freezing.
Crazy. That we should talk about that on our separate podcast where we're going to just talk about the weather.
Okay, we'll just talk about the weather. Yeah. The scary thing is I think people would listen. That's the weird thing. I think people would listen.
People love talking about the weather.
But people. I'm pleased to announce that as of last episode, day after last episode, I got my sort of classes for my 6-week mark after surgery for my stomach.
Yeah.
And I'm now permitted to eat almost anything, although they will discourage me from eating too much bread. But I had bread because I had a protein loaf of bread. They make protein loaves that are higher in protein, so they use a bit of different flour. I'm basically eating everything now, except for sweets and desserts, which will make me very ill, possibly right away. So I just wanted to announce that I'm getting stronger because of that, because I can have a variety of foods. And I've been getting grocery orders sent in to me constantly with different things that I'm thinking about. And it has to be protein first. 50% of my plate has to be protein. 25% has to be vegetables so that I can have a bowel movement now and again. And 25% has to be carbs because you still need carbs. Yeah. So basically everything I eat has to be protein first. And that's not new. That's not something I've done ever. I've never had enough protein. I've never been a huge meat eater, but now I have to love variations of, getting protein on my plate. My family went to a provincial park, which just built a new visitor center, and I thought it had an electric car charger, but it is not. Maybe it did for a second. I don't know, but it's got a NEMA plug, which is like a dryer plug.
Yeah.
Different than your normal outlet in North America. It's 220 volts. It's got some vertical blades in it. There's like 3 or 4. I can't remember. So you have to take your own charger from home. Mine's kind of mounted to my house, so no one steals it.
Yeah.
But I would have had to take it from home and then plug it in there, and you would get, I don't know what it's rated at, because some chargers are rated more than what that plug might give, and that might blow the breaker or start a fire or something like that. I don't know, but at least 6 kilowatts it would do. So it would be, worthwhile if you were hiking around there. The Trans-Canada, we've got fires in British Columbia, Canada, and there's 2 routes that you can take from west through the mountains east through the mountains towards the west coast of Canada. And one is the highway number 1. And I took the alternate route last year just to try something different, which was nice, but kind of windy.
Yeah.
The hydro lines, says TransCanadaHighway.com, are down just east of Revelstoke. This is a couple days ago. No fuel or charging services available along TransCanada number 1, the main highway in Canada, between Revelstoke and the Alberta border, which is a good stretch and a difficult stretch. Lots of elevation changes. But the road is open to traffic. So I thought that interesting that they're mentioning that the power is out. It tells you two things. One, that they care about charging, that people care about charging, that there is people who now, there's enough people, especially there in British Columbia, that have electric cars. The other thing is that you can't pump gas without electricity. And all these yahoos on the internet who say, what do you do if the power's out? Well, what the hell do you do when the power's out? Suck it with your mouth out of a tube? No, you just don't pump gas because that's the way it is. Also, the Spokane complex fires in Spokane, Washington have destroyed more than 700 structures, not all of them homes, but some of them businesses as well, and forced the evacuation of 65,000 people. And so if we have listeners there in Oregon, and I know we do in places in Oregon, I hope you're safe and not directly affected by the fires. But this is another instance of the wildland-urban interface colliding, building out into the wildlands, and that wildland getting hot and dry, and those fires coming for those homes. So that's another instance. I think that's more under control now, but the people are still evacuated nonetheless. That's tough to evacuate. I've never evacuated. Hope I never do. Hope no one listening ever has to. But if you had, maybe you could drop us a note on our email that's in your show notes and let us know what your experience was.
Okay, so further to the recent heat waves, the story is from about a week ago, and there were, of course, massive heat waves in a lot of places, including Las Vegas. So I came across this clip on YouTube from News 3 Las Vegas, and they're talking about the delays that they were having at the airport in Las Vegas because of the heat.
The hottest day of the year has taken a toll at Reed International Airport. More than 450 flights were delayed so airlines could make sure their jets were light enough to get off the ground in the thinner, hot air.
We got offered $2,500, to volunteer to decline because of weight restrictions due to the weather.
Hot air is not as dense, so consequently it's not as efficient on the jet engine.
Plus, hot air is thinner.
So consequently, the wings on the aircraft are not as efficient.
On a 114-degree day, Yadon explains that an engine has a more difficult time producing the thrust needed for a plane to take off.
I thought it was just aerodynamics because there was less oomph in that air. The particles are spread out, so there's less air in that volume. I thought you couldn't lift off. And usually we hear this about Phoenix, which is hotter than Las Vegas, but Las Vegas is experiencing it too. Also, my other thought that I had during that clip was they'd look at me, the fat guy, kill two birds with one stone, get that guy to take the money. And of course I would. You offer me thousands of dollars, James is in.
Well, I know that we've talked about Harbor Air quite a few times, which is the small, short hop airline in Vancouver. They do take your weight when you book a ticket or when you're getting on the plane. They need to know your weight because these are small planes and they want to balance people on the left side and the right side and all that kind of stuff. So, I don't know if we're heading towards a future where commercial jets are going to ask for your weight, maybe.
Yeah, it's also an embarrassing part if you are overweight. I was asked that when I flew on a private jet once, they had to give your weight. You had to register your weight. They didn't weigh you though, which is nice.
Yeah.
But you don't want to lie either because
or the plane goes down.
The plane goes down after takeoff. We can't get left. Somebody must have lied.
Yeah. So maybe we're heading.
And your luggage too. They do weigh your luggage because they got to know the luggage.
Yes. And they want to charge you extra if it's too heavy. So several things. So yes, first of all, maybe in the future, you're going to have to, say what your weight is when you get onto airplanes. Second thing, the fact that they offered that woman $2,500, and I assume that was a credit, like a $2,500 credit.
Yeah,
I think
it's not
that's
real money.
Likely what it was. But the idea that any Canadian airline would ever offer you anything more than a refund you would have to fight for.
Get off the plane, fatty, you're too heavy.
No, the service on Canadian Airlines has just gotten so terrible.
No competition.
There's no competition.
Not enough competition.
There's two major airlines, and they've essentially split up the flights between the two of them. So you're stuck taking them no matter what. So they absolutely do not care to piss you off. And there are laws in Canada that, they have to adhere to certain standards for this air traffic stuff, but they don't. And, you'd have to spend hundreds of hours fighting with them to make them, comply with the law. It's a real pet peeve of mine. It's terrible.
Yeah, I'm fighting with Amazon just to get my protein bars that went to my neighbor.
Oh, yeah.
Like, do I want to eat them now that the neighbor has had access to them? Maybe he injected it with something,
So in the future, I think we're going to have to take hot weather into account when we're thinking about booking flights. Because right now,
everybody's going to have to go on Ozempic. Everybody's going to have to. This is going to help the airlines. They're going to have free Ozempic commercials on their planes so that everybody lightens up.
Because I'm already nervous about flying in the winter, because in where we are, you can often get a blizzard or minus 40 and, flights get canceled. Well, now the other extreme is true for hot weather.
Yeah, like all the hubs, in the U.S. the Northeast or Minneapolis or Toronto, those hubs can get blizzards anytime. Like you don't know if you're planning your trip ahead. It would be a crapshoot because you can be stranded for a long time without compensation.
Yeah.
So the International Energy Agency has upgraded its forecast for electric vehicles for this year, 2026. In case you're joining us late, it is 2026. Thanks to the energy crisis, this is happening, and they now expect the share of electric cars to be 29% of all vehicles sold, light vehicle, passenger vehicles, trucks, SUVs, cars. Nobody buys cars. My son's trying to buy a car in truck country, so I figured, maybe it'd be easier, but we'll see. 29%. It was 25% last year, which was a quarter. Now we're starting to talk in terms of a third. Big growth is coming from markets outside the usual leaders, Brian. Australia, Brazil, India, South Korea, and Vietnam have all roughly doubled EV sales compared to the same period in 2025. Now, Canada is a northern beaver hat wearing version of Australia.
Yeah.
Who are far less tough and more apologetic. But very similar countries. We're in the Commonwealth of Great Britain, and similar populations.
Yep.
So, large country, spread out populations. There's a lot of similarities with Canada and Australia. And I just wonder, once the Chinese EVs penetrate our market, it wouldn't be within the first couple of years, but maybe a few years from now, maybe we start seeing huge gains. We are colder than Australia, at least where the population is. So that's one thing. Strong momentum plus government support across Latin America, Southeast Asia, and Europe is expected to push global EV sales up another 10% this year. The biggest thing holding back even for faster growth, this is sales, the number of sales, not the percentage of sales. The biggest thing holding back even further growth is China's auto markets has slowed down to their economic situation in China right now. People aren't buying cars, but when they are often buying electric. Even so, China is still expected to have more than 60% of its new car sales be electric when 2026 is said and done. And even if the total EV sales stay about the same as last year, because other car sales are going down, EV adoption keeps accelerating globally, with emerging markets now becoming some of the biggest growth engines. We talk about this all the time on the show. A lot of these smaller markets like Vietnam are pushing EV sales up. EV sales were 35% higher in the second quarter of this year than the first. So that tells you that the Hormuz energy crisis, oil shock thing, war, if you will, as, the price of oil matters.
Yeah.
The high gas prices make a difference. This was the idea of carbon pricing, which we had in Canada and got voted out because pandemic, the cost of living was going up and people didn't have a stomach for it. But it proves that actually works, that it would drive EV adoption if gas prices were higher. And my fear is this, that once the Hormuz crisis ends, if it ever does, and the administration seems to be getting strung along constantly, just like they might do to someone else, it may never end. I don't know. It'll have to end sometime. But when it does, I think there's going to be a huge crash, because during that time of high gas prices and the oil shock, electrification is accelerated. It would have kept going anyway, but it's even accelerated beyond that. And so when the dust settles, then suddenly there's less demand than you thought. And in that time, OPEC is falling apart too, right? So you can't necessarily have controls on the supply as much to keep the prices up. So I'm kind of glad that this is happening, because I think I think that the longer it is, the more EV adoption takes off and becomes normalized. Because I do think that gas prices, oil prices will collapse.
Yeah. And the price of gas is up here, of course, but we just still don't have the EVs available in the dealerships for people to buy. But of course, that's changing. The Chinese cars are starting to come to Canada. So, it won't be long before it starts taking off here. All right. Speaking of countries switching to electric vehicles, this is from Electrek. The country of Laos has banned new gas cars imported into the country, effective basically immediately. It was took effect on June the 1st of this summer. Nearly every new car cleared for import into Laos has to be electric. And this went into effect June 1st. It's going to be in place until the end of the year. And I imagine at that point, they're going to evaluate whether or not this is working and can continue. But Laos is a landlocked country that runs primarily on hydroelectric power. So they have tons of nice, clean, green electricity. What they don't have is oil and gas. So the oil and gas has to be imported into the country, and they have to pay for this with foreign currency. Laos is not necessarily a very wealthy country. There's 7 million people there. They realized, this is probably pretty stupid that we keep importing all this oil and gas when we have all of this nice hydroelectric power. They have so much of it, they often export it as well. This is a thing that they are known for. There are exceptions. This is basically passenger cars is what they're talking about. No new gas-powered passenger cars. So public transport vehicles, construction machinery, project-related trucks, and other specialized vehicles are currently exempt. There are places in the country where diesel is more necessary because they don't necessarily have the electric infrastructure, and they don't necessarily have the charging infrastructure quite yet. So they are putting a big push on building out the charging infrastructure, and that's going to get a big boost from the current government regulations. They're also fully electric vehicles under $50,000 get a full excise tax exemption, and they also cut the registration fees for EVs. And it's requiring transportation companies to run at least 10% electric fleets by the end of 2026. By the end of this year, fleets will have to be at least 10% electric. So, like I said, the ban goes to the end of the year. There are concerns about the charging infrastructure, not necessarily being able to keep up, but this is just a start, and they decided to start with a complete ban on new fossil fuel cars, which is wild.
Yeah, there's 7 million plus people there. And, we used to have a little stinger here for whenever a country banned or announced a ban of oil, right?
Oil ban.
Oil ban.
So I'm dusting it off for this.
Nice.
But that was always countries politically whining about different dates, whether it's 2030, 2035, 2040.
Yeah.
They just did it. They just said, sorry, right now, today, we're not wasting any time.
Yeah. And, I'm interested in photography and, there's been this huge transition from film photography to digital photography. And so a lot of people were sort of upset when they stopped making film cameras. But guess what? There's 100 years of used film cameras out there.
Yeah.
And, there's maybe not 100 years of gas cars out there, but, for the last 20 years, if you really, really need a gas car, if you really want to buy one, there's a used one somewhere that you can get. There's ways around all this.
I just watched a really long documentary on the Kodak factory that makes film in Rochester, New York. I was going to send it to you, but I thought, this probably would have come up in his algorithm.
I don't know.
Yeah, it was interesting. It's still a craft. Like they still need people who really understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
And you can't, if that person dies or retires, you're in rough shape. You need people to really, some of the work they do is completely in the dark, which is interesting.
Yeah, that's right.
And this was a YouTube video made by the same people who teach me how to use the software we use for the Clean Energy Show. So I'm usually getting educational software, but they got a tour of the Kodak plant on.
And one of Kodak's big problems was, they used to have these factories that were the size of a football field.
Yeah.
And then the demand shrunk, so it didn't make sense. They literally had to build new factories that were smaller because they couldn't keep, there was still a demand for film, and that has been actually growing in the last couple of years. There's been a resurgence. But yeah, the gigantic factories that they used to have, there was no way to keep those operating effectively.
Well, here's an interesting clean energy angle to that story. I saw smokestacks there, and I started to wonder, well, what is the carbon impact of shooting on film? But they actually addressed it in the video at one point. Because, you've made a digital feature film, right? So when you make a digital feature film, you have to buy hard drives. And you don't just buy one hard drive to store the stuff, you buy multiple, and you have to have multiple copies of all those hard drives as backups. Hopefully not all on the same place, because you spend a lot of money getting what's on that hard drive. You can't go reshoot things, right? Because in real films, there's 100, 300 people. There's a lot of people, a lot of expensive labor involved, and locations and trucks and rentals. So you can't go back and reshoot things. You want to take care of it. And all that has a carbon footprint, right? Those hard drives, when you might, I don't know how many you would for a feature film, but there's a lot of them, and they're expensive, and they're carefully crafted. Yeah,
well, I always wondered what was the bigger carbon footprint, like to publish a newspaper every day and deliver it to your doorstep and it gets recycled immediately. Or if you read the, stuff on your iPad, well, everyone throws those away every 3 years. It's not
we
like
wouldn't.
that.
I wish we could. We don't. Well, there's some problems in the nuclear world in Southern Europe where it's very hot. But first of all, this is our first show of the month, and that's when we start thanking our Patreon supporters who support us at a certain level. The executive level is $20 a month. Green Bastard, Brett Routley, and Tiernan, thank you so much for that. And our Plus members at $10 a month, Bob Armstrong, John Hayes, Timo Kallenberger, Wes S., and Glenn Wright. Thank you very much for supporting us at those great levels. And there's a whole slew of people in the Clean Club that is getting our bonus podcast. We'll list them later in the show. I think we might have to split that up into 2 shows one day because there's getting to be so many people. Thank you for supporting us. Patreon.com/cleanenergypod. And here we go, Romania. You know what they had to do in Romania? Did you see this? They blew up a rock.
No.
The army came in and blew up a rock for a nuclear plant.
The rock, was it attacking the nuclear plant?
No, it was not. I just watched Project Hail Mary last night, which had a alien creature like a rock. Anyway, the rock was diverting water from the plant because the river levels are so low that they thought they could get more water flow towards the plant, which nuclear plants use water to cool their systems and to make steam, because they heat water, they make steam, and then the steam drives turbines, which makes electricity. Coal plants do the same thing, except, instead of radioactive material, they use coal, which I guess some people would argue is radioactive as well on some level. So Romania had to get the army in to blow it up, and they had videos of this. This is all over the internet and all over the news now. Because explosions are good TV, Brian. You know that.
Yeah, I love explosions.
And now the army is saying, we hope the nuclear plant gets more water now because the explosion was a great success. The other issue, Faith, is not only low rivers. A lot of the nuclear that we think about maybe here in the West is attached to the oceans. And if you think about Japan, the Fukushima disaster was on the ocean, and there was a tidal wave and an earthquake as well. But some places in Europe are using rivers, and those rivers during this changing climate are getting hot and dry. The level of the river is going way down. You can't even, navigate the rivers anymore because they're so low at this point. And the other issue is that the water in those rivers is already too hot, and you can't add more heat to it from the nuclear plant. When they output that water back into the river, it heats up the river even more. And there's a threshold where they're killing the ecosystem because it gets too hot. They don't want to destroy the ecosystem in the river. But Hungary uses a lot of energy from one nuclear reactor, half of its energy from nuclear reactor that I'll get to in a moment. But the Romanian military donated a Parjoaia rock. The rock had a name, Brian, so it was big. And the Danube, now it's a nameless rock because it's just dust. And the Danube to redirect more water towards the Cerna Voda nuclear power plant. Severe drought has caused river levels to fall rapidly, putting pressure on the plant's cooling system. And the operation used 180 kilograms of explosives, which is a lot
Yikes.
of explosives. That rock had no chance. Crews must now remove the debris and redirect the current towards the branch supplying water to the plant. One reactor has already been shut down at that nuclear facility. Nuclear plants usually have more than one reactor because when they go down for maintenance, the other one can still make electricity. Authorities warned that without emergency measures, the entire plant could be at risk. 40% of Southeast European nuclear capacity is offline right now due to drought and the heat wave. 40% of nuclear. That's probably, these plants are like 40 years old. They probably didn't anticipate climate change quite that well, obviously, or that's this soon. The Danube's record low levels for shutdown of Hungary's only nuclear plant, and that nuclear plant, almost half the power to the country of Hungary is down because the record low levels of water. Its only nuclear power plant will be forced to shut down entirely for the first time ever due to record low water levels of the river Danube. And that's from BBC. You can read more on that story. It's climate change, people. We should do something about it.
And we do. We have a podcast, and you can contact us, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com, voicemail at speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. And you can support us on patreon.com/cleanenergypod for as little as $1 a month. Coming up next, it's the lightning round.
Tired of your car insurance rate going up, even with a clean driving record? You're not alone. That's why there's Jerry, your proactive insurance assistant. Jerry compares rates side by side from over 50 top insurers and helps you switch with ease. Jerry even tracks market rates and alerts you when it's best to shop. No spam calls, no hidden fees. Drivers who save with Jerry could save over $1,300 a year. Switch with confidence. Download the Jerry app or visit jerry.ai/Libsyn today. That's JERRY.ai/LIBSYN.
It's time for the lightning round.
The lightning round is a fast-paced look at the latest headlines in climate, clean energy and transportation.
Australia has installed 500,000 home batteries. What's a home battery? Why, it's a battery in your home.
Wow.
Why is there a battery in your home? It's to store excess solar power, because if you have solar panels on your house, chances are you have to feed it into the grid. It's better to store it and put it out at night after the sun goes down when the demand is still high. Also, you can charge them up overnight if the electricity rates vary the times of the day when there's low demand at night. They charge you very little sometimes. And the grid also gets help because those powers, if the grid says, oh, I need some electricity really fast, the batteries can put it into the grid instantly. It's deploying 2,000 home batteries per day in Australia currently, Brian.
Crazy.
2,000 a day.
Crazy.
Yeah, Australia's at the forefront. More or less. Good solar there, though. Austin, Texas did a study last year to find out how much it would cost to bury all of its old power lines. You want to bury them because storms knock them out. Sometimes drunk drivers do.
Yeah.
Sometimes birds do. But often it's storms, right? Or tree branches hit them and you have power outages. It costs a lot of money.
Yeah, or fires.
Fires is another reason. $50 billion. They're not going to do it. It's a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
It's too much, unfortunately. China's coal generation is still at a record at 6% higher than it was 5 years ago. But in the context of electricity demand, the electricity demand rose 27%. So coal is only 66% higher.
Yeah.
And it's a complex thing to understand for some people, but their demand is shooting up like crazy. And it's not all coal that's meeting that demand. It's only a little bit of coal. It really is largely solar.
Yeah. They're going fast with the solar and wind and everything, but they still have some coal.
It's time for a CES Fast Fact. 29 nations have deployed 10 gigawatts or more of solar. 29 countries. 82 countries have 1 gigawatt more of solar. So, solar.
Yeah.
Solar generated 15.8% of electricity in Texas during May 2026. That is up from just 12.1% in May 2025. So in spite of all the resistance and the hemming and hawing and the political BS, solar, not as much as wind perhaps, but solar is taking off. And batteries are taking off even more than everything else. WeRide and Green Mobility is going to launch Denmark's first robotaxi service. a year and a half from now in 2027. So we ride in green mobility. And it's time for another CES Fast Fact. The worst day of June heat wave in France. The worst day of the June heat wave in France killed more people than the worst day of COVID, according to INSEE France.
Wow.
And we've been talking about that. It is just kind of a silent killer. And, you don't see morgues necessarily in ice rinks, but it's a major disaster that happens that is quietly not maybe realized by a lot of people. An IEEFA review of 13 operating carbon capture projects found that most captured below design levels of 90%. So they weren't meeting their target goals. And ours that we have here at a coal plant, you want to capture the carbon emissions from coal or natural gas or other industry. They're not doing well. They're still not doing well. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. Snow guns on Australian ski resorts, it's winter there now, used close to 1 gigawatt hour of electricity in July to make snow, just to shoot the snow.
Yeah, so these are machines that shoot fake snow into the air, create real snow, I guess.
They create real snow with water, from what I understand.
Yeah.
They shoot it into the air when the night is cool and there's no precipitation, so drought and temperatures are higher than they normally are. So what you see is these white stripes down these brown slopes, these brown hills, mountains, and it looks quite depressing. A report in New Scientist claims the collapse of the AMOC ocean current may already be locked in. And if that's true, we'll be living in a very different world soon. That is from newscientist.com. Let's do another CES Fast Fact. Bordeaux, France, has now recorded more days above 40 degrees Celsius in 2026 alone than during the entire 105-year period from 1920, when observations began to be recorded, to 2025. More above 40. Yeah, and on that note, Brian, I usually like to go on a positive note, not this week. Finally, this week, let's go out on a reality check. The extreme heat, fire, and droughts are displacing more than 200,000 people and killing more than 20,000 people in Europe, and displacing thousands more in the northwest United States and throughout various parts of Canada. And all that is happening right now in a 1.4 degree Celsius heated world. That is to say, we are 1.4 degrees Celsius higher than pre-industrial levels if you averaged all the temperatures in the world. So that's how they do it. And we didn't do the work to limit it to 1.5 like we were supposed to do. And even 1.5 would have been a lot more hellish than I would have ever imagined, because, there's so many smoke days and so many people dying. It's just not going to happen. We are not going to hit 1.5. We had our chance and we blew it despite many warnings from scientists, and we are inevitably going to breach 1.5 and head towards 3 degrees Celsius. This is from a big article in the New York Times, which you can find on our Patreon page, patreon.com/cleanenergypod. It's free. Go there. You don't need an account. This mess gets exponentially worse before it gets better. And it only gets better if we urgently change course. Urgently change course. So I encourage everyone to vote wisely and get engaged. I'm sure you are. Scientist Johan Rockstrom told the New York Times it will get worse and worse and worse, to the point where, I'm afraid, we'll be passing the limits of adaptation. What's happening means that we should increase our ambition level, not reduce it. And as I said, that article, go read it now. It's a gift article, free, no paywall. Go to patreon.com/cleanenergypod.
And on that sobering note, here is a reminder. We are on various platforms, including TikTok, Instagram, and Blue Sky as Clean Energy Pod. The email again, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. And as always, remember to hit the follow or subscribe button. And we have new episodes every week.
And speaking of our Patreon, this is where we thank them once a month. You get different perks. And if you spend $5 US a month, this is the perk you get. One of the perks you get is a bonus podcast and a shout out on our podcast. Noah Cook, Denny and Linda, Jonathan Dick, Bob Eaton. Hello, Bob. Bob 1, as we sometimes call him. Josh Engen, Sean Ennis, Andy Fessler, Jack Frankovich, Roshan Gervais, H., Sean Hines. Over in the UK, hello, Sean. Just Jack, David Kleinke, Ryan Nielsen, Peter O'Donnell, Weldon Penner, Matthew Pointer, who is an advocate for EVs in Saskatchewan where we live. Thank you for the work you do, Matthew, and your support. Robo Arthur Slade, Joe Thorsheim, Landon Yu, Roger Watson, Richard W. Thank you all. And there's lots of other people who support us for less than $5 a month. Thank you all for supporting this podcast because it is why we are here now. We are keeping going strong because of you.
Yes. We'll see you next week.
And for our bonus podcast soon.